All right, guys, welcome back to Within Tolerance, episode 22. We are joined with Jeff Fritsch from CAMplete. And Jeff, let's just start things off by where did you start? How did you get into CAMplete? What is CAMplete for all the listeners? Because I know some people don't exactly know what CAMplete is. So give us a little bit of background on yourself and about CAMplete itself.
Sure. So thank you for having me into the podcast and being able to talk a little bit about the product and really what we do and where we do see some interactions with those manufacturers. So really, what I mean at CAMplete doing is really looking after growing the company and really being able to address the needs of our customers and really being able to bring more partners and both on the software and on the machine tool side of things, so that we can continue to expand on that portfolio and really more specifically about the product and where that comes into play for the shops as a whole is really by the nature of what we're doing, which is really focused on the post-processing and G-code verification side of things. So really being able to generate proper codes from the CAM system that a customer may have in place, all the way to really making sure that what they're doing is actually feasible in their real environment, of being able to run this part.
I guess a good question is for our listeners is how did CAMplete start? I mean, I know that you guys have a sister company, Milterra. Did Milterra come first, or did CAMplete come first?
So interestingly enough, that is a really cool question, and obviously a lot of people ask that question fairly regularly. So really the story goes about, it's a really cool story, but it really starts back in the late 90s. So you're really looking 97, 98. Where really it was three students from the University of Waterloo that were working in some of their projects, which at the time were really focused on cylinder head machining. So if you go back and you look at 20 years ago, being able to digitize a cylinder head port and then being able to put toolpath, or for one, put an actual surface across all those points and then put toolpath, get proper code, simulate it, and actually being able to machine the cylinder head 20 years ago was really something that was, that was that black magic type of box where you just put stuff in there and then magic happens and there comes a cylinder head out of it. So that was really how those guys got started and eventually really spun off CAMplete, and we're really focused on that cylinder head market for quite a few years, or the early years of the company, and just by the nature of what the product was, it became a very very quick success, and eventually a lot of those machine shops that were doing that cylinder head porting type of application had the software, and eventually the product really had to evolve into what it is today. Now, one of those big machine tool manufacturer at the time, for cylinder head porting was Boston. So that's really how we got our very first introduction, if you want, to the machine tool world, and really being able to interface both the software world with the real world. So throughout those years, Boston eventually changed hands a few times, and now eventually kind of disappeared, but a lot of those remains are still somewhat visible with what we know today as GF Machining Solutions. So GF really became our very first machine partner that we really started to work with very closely to really develop a solution that was specific to what those machines required. And again, you look back at early 2000s to be able to do high-speed milling and full 5-axis simultaneous type of work was really not something that was all that common. So 2002 really started working closely with GF, and then 2003 we added Hermley, and then that's really when we started adding more and more machine partners. Now, over those years, working so closely with those machine partners, very often, or not very often, but slowly, gradually over time, there would be the opportunity to work directly with end users, like customers from GF, and it would be a pretty advanced application. Say, we don't necessarily have the time, the people, the knowledge, to really address this project the way it should be done. Can you guys look at this particular part for us? And sure, we would jump on that and really sharpen our teeth, if you want, onto some of those parts, and do a really good job on it. Customer would be really happy, and then say, hey, you know what? I actually do have a family of parts. Can you look at those? And then eventually turned into whole turnkey projects, which were, hey, you know what? Why don't you guys just manufacture all of those components for us, and then we're gonna go from there. So that's really what started to happen more and more often, to the point that we totally had enough activities to really start a company really dedicated to doing that type of work. So eventually, again, Milterra kind of started going after its own customers, developing its own products, but also still very much doing a lot of turnkey projects, either directly with our own customers or for some of those machine tool partners that we work with. And that also, works extremely well with what we're doing on the software side, because ultimately that equipment that we have in-house has to be run just like it is for any other customer that's running a machine shop. We do have those very same needs, to have proper code, to be able to maintain that spindle uptime, to be able to change setups very quickly. So we have those exact same needs, and I like to tell people that we drink our own Kool-Aid. We do use the software every day, and a lot of those features that are implemented in the software are really driven by ultimately our own needs to make parts the way we want to make them. And at the same time, for software guys, it's extremely valuable to be able to run downstairs and really ask the guys, why are you running this part like this? What are you trying to do? And have that first knowledge, like really hands-on knowledge of being in the shop, and really seeing where what they're developing on the software side is really used, and gives them that real life perspective versus just doing software in their own bubble. So yeah, that's really how we really went about it.
So how much overlap does the CAMplete and Milterra team have? I mean, it sounds like you guys work very closely together, but do you have people that are on the staff of both companies, or?
Yeah, so there's definitely, obviously the three guys that started the companies are still very much involved in the everyday operation of the business. Two of them are that's really their baby. That's really something that they've started right in universities, and are still coding every day, coming to the office just like everybody else at 8:30, 9 o'clock, and they're coding all day. They're answering the phone, and they're very much involved. And then the third one is very much taking the overall direction of the companies, and really helping us kind of grow there. But yes, in the everyday life of the companies, there's really nothing that's really set in stone, saying, oh my God, that is strictly a Milterra project, or strictly a CAMplete project. There's opportunities from both companies for people to be working on either project, and we're really not just looking at it as, okay, that's strictly a software or strictly a machining type of question. It's really, how can we answer this question the best way possible, from a 30,000 foot view, as to really, is it applicable, what they're trying to do? Is there a better way for us to do that in the software side, so that ultimately we can really address not only what the customer ultimately wants right then and there, but also really trying to push the technology from both ends. So yeah, there's definitely a tremendous amount of overlap with what we're doing every day.
And you've got a third company under the roof too, right? A tool cutting or tool
Yeah,
grinding company?
Yeah, you guys don't miss much there. Yeah, so we do have a third company called Zidoro, which that's really more focused on overlapping again a little bit more with what we're doing on the Meltera side, especially if you look at some of those very intricate or very tight tolerance type of projects where we're typically looking at aerospace or medical type of applications where the materials are very difficult. The tolerances can be very tight. And then at that point, again, kind of taking that 30,000-foot view of what is actually going on in here, not just having that tunnel vision, but really expanding at looking at what's going on and say, okay, we have a very tight tolerance, very difficult material. We know we have the equipment to handle it. We can definitely do that from the software perspective. What is the next possible bottleneck to prevent us from hitting those tolerances? And at that point, that focus comes on the tooling and the fixturing. So on the tooling side, again, working with very tight tolerances, the tooling has to be up to par as well. And that's where then at certain for a particular project, it does make sense to have tooling dedicated to the parts, and that's really that type of very very niche areas that we're focusing on. It's not something where we would want to go and compete with all the big guys. That's really not the attraction there. But we're really more so to have something very very focused, very high quality for very very specific applications. That's really where the tooling now becomes critical. And again, being able to combine all that knowledge that we have from the software side, how is that applicable to, let's say, tool grinding applications? Can we bring additional value to what the guys are trying to do on the tool grinding side? Really, again, if you look at a grinder, it's really a 5-axis machine put on its sides. So it's really not new territory, but there's a different approach to that. So again, really being able to kind of put all those elements together and ultimately bring that knowledge, I guess, and that those deliverable that customers keep coming back for. So yeah, it really makes for super cool days, very very interesting projects, and it's changing every day. So yeah, super interesting work.
That's really cool. So speaking of the cutter grinders, I mean, it sounds like a new machine that you had to add. Like, how long is the development process when you get a new machine or a new machine tool manufacturer and you want to bring them into the fold? Like, how long does that take for you guys to take the model and the kinematics and all of that and typically get it through your software and ready for a customer to work with?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a very very good question. So more so on the grinding side, that's really something that we really started getting into not that long ago. It was maybe 3 or 4 years ago that we really started really looking very specifically at the tool grinding. So that's still an area where we're learning, where we're finding opportunities to do things better and trying to adapt that. But I think more so where I can expand a lot more on is really what we're doing on the CAMplete side of things with machine partners. So that's question really, how long does it take? That's a very interesting question. There's really a few different areas that we can cover there, and one of those is really how we go about putting those machine partners and really how we work with those machine partners. So really from the approach that we've taken there is, we're a lot of the people that we have working at CAMplete have been there for a very long time, and they all bring different variations of knowledge from that industry. And myself, I come from the post processing development world, and I've been doing post processors for different CAM systems, for different machines for a little while, and for people that haven't quite put their hands in there, or even for people that have, it's not necessarily always enjoyable. And ultimately, that always comes down to, okay, I bought this great machine. I'm super pumped about getting this new piece of equipment on my floor. I totally master the toolpathing side of things, and now you have a great toolpath. You want to go run it, and the first thing that comes up is, okay, what are we going to do for code? Where am I going to hack a post from? Is somebody in the forum having one? Is it going to match exactly what I have? Do I need to prove it and troubleshoot it? And it becomes very cumbersome for all the people involved in that in that whole discussion, whether it's at the machine sides, the CAM application guys, and ultimately the customer that's just looking at all these guys coming together, trying to put their heads together again, to bring a solution to a customer that just wants to make the parts. And we've been there ourselves. When we do bring new pieces of equipment, we have those same questions. Okay, like what's different now about this machine? Is the controller different? So a lot of those questions come, and again, from a customer standpoint, they're really looking at their parts. Okay, I need to get this part out the door. Um, I'm sure somebody has this machine figured out, and that's really the approach that we've taken and run with, in the sense that the way to do this is really to have the proper information right from the start with the right people, and the right people for those machines are ultimately the people building them. And that's really how we've been running there, to work very closely with those machine partners, whether it's GF or Hermle or Matsuras or some of the others that we've added over the years. The approach has really always been to be able to work directly with the factory and being able to have that connection with the people that develop those machines, that engineer them, that design them, and have that proper information, and really sit down with them and go over all the specs. What is the machine actually capable of doing? Not just necessarily what this customer in right now that we're working on, or working with, is concerned about, but really what are the capabilities of that machine. And then from there, once we have that solution developed with the factory, then that gets propagated, depending on the builder, either across the world or to the local application teams. And then that solution gets proven out in the field. And that's really through that iterative work that we're really being able to bring that solution to customers, with a very, very strong starting point.
So
But
are you typically developing a post processor and a machine model along with your machine tool partners as they build a new machine, or do you wait until, or do they not give you the information before it comes out to the public?
Yeah, well, no, we really do have both. And then to expand there, and ultimately to answer your question about how long it takes. So yes, we do have, those machine partners have been in business for quite a while. So bringing some of those new machine partners in, obviously we do have some catch up to do on their existing machine line. So there's definitely some development work there. And then as as we're caught up with their existing machine lines, and they're bringing new models in, then yes, at that point we do get involved. Typically before the machine gets released, to the market. So that ultimately, for those machine partners, it does make a lot of sense as well to do have a solution to present to their customers that say, hey, you know what, the factory has been working on it. The application guys are going to come here and install the machine and train you on it, are using it. It does make parts. It's going to be a great starting point for you that is going to be growing with you as you expand your capabilities with that machine. So kind of going back to that whole timing thing, it's not because we're not announcing new machine partners that it's not something that we're working on. And there's a tremendous amount of development that goes into supporting those machines. And from our end, it's not a 1 week or 2 weeks or 1 month type of investment that we're doing. It's really, we're looking at years of investment that we're doing on the technical side, to really being able to bring a solution and really prove it out in the field, making parts, and ultimately so that we can make sure it is really addressing everything that the machine is capable of doing, and then expanding those capabilities with other features that are in the software. So yeah, very, very heavily involved with those machines partners. But there's all kinds of different things to look at. But after that, once we do have that platform in place, to add new machines is typically a matter of weeks, not months.
Oh wow, that's quicker than I thought.
Yeah.
So what about CAM softwares? How much easier or harder it is to make a post processor from a new CAM system to interact with CAMplete?
Yeah. So from that perspective, that's a question that does come up fairly regularly as well. So just to clarify things there, really, the post processing is done in our platform, and that also kind of lets me expand into some of those capabilities there, where the posting is done in CAMplete directly, and then from there we can do the post processing with data streams coming from one or multiple CAM systems. So how we operate with those different CAM systems is really really being able to grab all the information that's pertinent to the actual toolpath and to what the customers or the programmer ultimately are trying to do. So really from a CAM system perspective, you're really controlling the tip of the tool, and you say, okay, I want my tool to move from point A to point B. And after that, turn the spindle on and do some of those machine functions. But ultimately, after um, that toolpathing is done, whether you run this particular toolpath on a Haas machine or an Okuma or a Mazak or a DMG or a Matsura, the tool is still going to move the same way relative to the origin. And really, what we're doing there is capturing that's machine neutral data, if you want, coming out of the CAM system. Let's say go to point A, go to point B, go to point C, turn the spindle on, and then we'll grab that and we'll generate the proper output for that particular machine tool that the customer is running. So again, that's where having that connection with the machine builder is critical to what we're doing. And with some of those machine partners that we have, we go to the extent of providing those serialized 3D models integrated into TruePath. So it's not just a generic version, if you want, of how the machine should be built. That is exactly that set of options that the customer
Oh
purchased.
wow, I
So
didn't realize that you could do that.
yeah, yeah, and then on the CAM software side of things, again, it's really being able to capture all that information that is relevant. So obviously the tooling information is relevant to what you're doing, the holders, where the part is located, the fixture, really everything that you would need to take into consideration is really something that we're trying to extract from all those different platforms. So again, we're not necessarily in a perfect world. There's some platforms that do have a better integration than others, and that is a little bit driven also by just what the market is like. Obviously, the more customers we have running on one particular platforms, obviously we tend to get a little bit more attention from a development resources allocation than a platform where that we may not run into as often. But yeah, so, all the basics are always there to be able to extract at least the toolpath information, part models, fixture model, and really everything that's relevant, and then TruePath can come into play and really help customers sort everything out there.
Okay. So what would you say is, I mean, I feel like the people who do know about CAMplete or at least simulation software, they know
Yeah.
that side of CAMplete. Like, what would you say is the most underrated feature? What feature of CAMplete would you want more people to know about that isn't well known?
Well, that is totally like one of the pitfalls, if you want, or really pet peeves areas that we're really always fighting with is when I talk to customers, even older customers, like, oh my gosh, you guys. I had no idea the software can really do as much as what it can do, and that's really again one of those areas that I'm very, very glad to have the opportunity to be here and talk about that a little bit more. And a lot of customers really will use TruePath as really a post processor. but there's also, from that perspective, I guess, really honestly, there's two types of customers that I guess I've seen over my years, and really there's the one type of customers are just getting started into 5-axis. They have run 3 and 4-axis machines, have a really good handle on what's going on, but now are keeping up with the technology, what the new capabilities those machines can bring to a shop, and now are expanding into that, and now there's new ways of fixturing, new ways of tool pathing, new tools to look at, new feeds and speeds, and there's a learning curve there. And then the last thing they really want to do is having to divert their attention to problems that are not necessarily something that they clearly understand or even want to spend the time investigating. They really want to focus on making those chips, keeping that machine up and running, make sure they can get that machine paid fairly quickly. And then at that point, I'll expand on that. So for those customers, that's really where working with the machine builder lets us bring a solution that's going to let those customers really focus on getting up to speed on what's going on, and making those parts without having to worry about crashing and not getting the proper code. On the other hand, the other group of customers we have, and these are maybe more some of the earlier customers, they're really on the other side of the spectrum, really pushing the envelope on really what the software is really even capable of doing at some times, and really leverage a lot of those features where they'll say, okay, now we have that same capabilities. To be able to handle multiple data streams, now we can start looking at parts a little bit different. We can allocate that programming work a little bit differently, and now we can start leveraging what each CAM system is really strong at and what each programmer is really comfortable or really confident with. And it starts breaking those very complex parts into very manageable chunks of programming time that each guy can focus on. So you can have one guy programming in Mastercam, another guy programming in PowerMill, a third guy programming in HyperMill or NX, and then once they all have their different bits and pieces done, now we're going to build one project that's going to be dedicated to one of those particular machine tools that they have running in the shop, and really gives them that assurance that they're going to have one piece of G code. They'll know exactly what has controlled that, and what the machine will be doing with that codes, and not have any surprises, and being able to change that entire project to a different machines, different kinematics or controller, as long as we're generating the code and we know how to manipulate that. It's something where we're going to have that flexibility. And I was reading one of those questions on Instagram about one of those unusual ways the software is used, and I was laughing because that's really one of those higher end examples that I have there of a customers that's really now at the point of programming their parts, proving them out in TruePath, and then shopping for machines based on what they want the actual toolpath and machine behavior to be. So it was quite surprising to hear that they're really pushing it to the point of picking machines now based on the feedback from the software. Definitely was not expecting that. So yeah, interesting anecdote there.
So that kind of actually gets into something. So that was Sam Hollander's question about, if you've had any customers use CAMplete in a way that surprised you.
Yes.
So you're saying that customers are using the output from CAMplete to decide on what machine tools to buy.
Yeah, so not even so much the output, but one of those features that we have built in TruePath when we generate the code is really being able to build an entire picture of the process, and really understand what the machine actually does, and really build that understanding of what's going on at the machine level. And depending on the parts and the tooling and how you have your entire setup really done on the machine, there are some type of machine kinematics that are not necessarily going to give you the same result as others. And now we do have some of those customers that are really pushing that to the extreme of saying, okay, we've had a similar parts running in the different machines. We need to update the equipment. Let's make sure we do have something that's applicable. Let's look at what type of tool motion we actually want around the parts, and make sure that we have everything controlled at that level, and then we'll look for the appropriate machine kinematics that can meet the demands that we would have from the way we want this part to be machined.
So that kind of gets into another one of our listener questions, NYDLS30. He one of his questions was, is it priced per machine or per seat? So does that mean that if you buy a seat, you have access to many machine models, or are you buying it per machine model, or how does the licensing model work with you guys?
Sure. So, that again brings a very interesting point in question there. So, a lot of it really goes back to the very tight relationship we have with the different machine partners. And from that perspective, we kind of have that same two groups of machine partners there. Um, so there is that one group where we've gone through that development cycle, and those machine partners really understand the value of what we bring to the table, really understand how that fits within their own value offering to customers, and really being able to not just bring just a machine, but really a complete solution, really a little bit of a new way of looking at it. And so, okay, that's great to have a machine, but ultimately we need to make sure that the customer is successful with that machine they have just purchased from us. And one of those ways to make sure that the customers are successful is to make sure they're up and running very quickly, and that they're able to get their ROI, and really being able to justify that investment that they've made. So from that perspective, some of those machine partners really understood that, embraced it, and then decided to offer the software really as part of the entire machine package. So just like you would get a controller and a chip evacuator, you would get software to drive this equipment properly.
Like
And
Metsura, I know does that, right?
yes. So Matsura is one of them. Methods is definitely a very, very good partner of ours from that perspective as well. Doosan Machine Tools very quickly jumped on board as well, and then as of September started offering TruePath as well. Um, so there's quite a few machine partners that are involved from that perspective, and really embrace that. Kitamura as being a one of them as well. And then we also do have some other machine partners that are offering the software at a subsidized cost. It's still a little bit of an option for customers when they purchase it at the time of the machine purchase. But yeah, they're still getting the same product, but really the approach that we've taken then is just like the development side, or the technical side is really dedicated um, to supporting those machines. The commercial side has to make sense as well, and is really appropriate for each machine partners with how they want to present those solutions to their customers there.
So, but
So ultimately, sorry, in terms of the pricing, how that's broken down, that's really up to each machine partner to decide how they want to present that to their customers. So typically speaking, we don't we refer to our machine partners because it's really a solution that's dedicated to that machine tool. So on the licensing side of things, yeah, I can dive into that a little bit more. But yeah, typically speaking, the one license would include support for one machine, and then after that, if the customer is interested at supporting multiple machines on different brands, or on the same brands and different you know different models, then at that point, that's something that we'll discuss with the customer and the different machine partners involved.
So, Jeff,
Yeah.
just for people listening, I'm curious. So, for example, myself, I'm looking into 5-axis. You
Yep.
don't by chance have a round, just a rough number off the top of your head for, let's say, a Haas UMC 750. What would CAMplete look like for that?
In terms of like hard dollars, an exact dollar amount.
Just round numbers. Is it a $5,000? Is it 10,000?
Okay. Yeah, yeah. No, so overall, generally speaking, yeah, you'd probably be looking a little bit over the 10,000 to get started. Let's say if you were looking at a UMC 750, you'd probably be looking in the 12,000 range. Um, but generally speaking, even for our partners that do offer it as an option, they're still very, very competitive, and do keep that within a fairly reasonable range. So altogether, I can tell you, I've never seen the software for one license being over some crazy numbers that you do here into the industry. So yeah, for 750, you'd probably be looking at about $12,000 to get started with a license, the 3D models in there, the post processor, the CAM plugins, and then some other goodies that we include in there.
So it's not something crazy, because I've heard some crazy numbers for exactly what you just said, and 12,000, that's really not that bad.
No, it's really not. And again, we kind of really taking that 30,000-foot view of that whole process of really what it takes. You buy a cam system, and now you're gonna have to get this 5-axis machine up and running. Okay, so what is it gonna take? Either you're gonna have to shop around, and I'm just gonna throw some numbers out there, just really to kind of give some references. If you're looking at, let's say, a very common cam system that's on the market, Mastercam. I absolutely love working with those guys. They're a tremendous partner of ours, and we've had a fantastic relationship with them. But that being said, a lot of those post processors are kind of left to a few companies in that Mastercam world. But long story short, if you had to buy this, you'd probably be looking at, let's say, 35 to maybe $5,000 just to get a Mastercam post processor. All right. So now you have code. If you wanted to look at verification, now that becomes very, very expensive. I can tell you it's going to be way more money than probably the 12,000. And again, you really have to look at what it would actually take to develop a solution like that, and doing it for every single customer and kind of reinventing the wheel every time for every customer is just not something that now becomes economically viable for a customer. So it also has to make sense from a financial standpoint. So again, you kind of have to look at that type of equipment. If you're looking at a very, very expensive piece of equipment, you're looking at five, six, $700,000. Then at that point, it's not something that's really stretching a customer by any means to add proper software on that. Where it becomes a little bit more difficult is maybe for some of those machines are priced a little bit more competitively. Maybe more in the early six figures. Then at that point, we also have to be very conscious of what's going on. And yes, it can be a great product with a lot of great features, but if the numbers at the end don't make sense, it is something that we have to be aware of as well. So yeah, again, that's where working with those machine partners going to come into play, to really being able to amortize or really break that whole development costs over a very large number of installations. The amount of work required from our end is very large, and is the same amount of work that anybody else in that industry would have. At some point or another, that's really where the rubber meets the road, and you have to put the work in. There's no way around it. But after that is really how you work about making this affordable for people so that they have access to that technology as well. So there is a little bit of a price tag attached to it, but again, looking at it from a bigger perspective, you would have to spend some money onto a post processor one way or another. If you wanted to look into verification, for sure you're going to have to spend additional money, and ultimately having that assurance that you're not going to have an issue with that machine, at the end of the day, you really put money in your pocket if you don't have to replace the spindle and have a service guy come in and pay for the travel expenses and the downtime and just the headache in general of having to deal with a crash machine is, it's totally worth it for a lot of shop owners and programmers as well.
Definitely. So you kind of touched on this earlier. Do you in conjunction with Milterra, would you offer this as a service? Like if somebody had just two part numbers that they wanted run on a specific machine and they knew they weren't going to need a full license, do you offer turnkey solutions as well?
Actually, that is a very, very interesting question. So that is not something that we do offer right now, but the idea has been tossed around a few times, and there is some definitely some cool features that we're working on right now. That I'm very, very excited over the next few months as they're coming to life. But that definitely has been tossed around. It's not something that we do have available right now. But yeah, definitely worth investigating a little bit more and see really how realistic that would be. And again, it has to be making sense for customers as well. Is that something that I don't know how much would you guys um, be willing to spend on something like that? Is it that is honestly that is just something I just don't know. I can look over the life of a post, how many times that would be used, and I just don't know. Is it like a $5 item? Is it a $50 item? Is it I just not sure. But that definitely worth
um,
the discussion for sure.
yeah. I mean, I think it's a very specific set of companies that would only do that. I feel like that's definitely not for everyone. It is for a very specific production shop that, like I
Yes.
said, only has a couple parts, or and really,
Oh yeah. No.
I feel like it would be extremely valuable to them. So it would be worth some money, and definitely looking into, like you said.
Yeah, and or maybe more so as a maybe like a subscription type of setup. So yeah, we're definitely playing with all these different ideas as well, to see what we really have to keep up with what's going on both on the machine side, on the software side as well, and really kind of find that right balance with what customers really want to see, what and just keeping up with times and kind of pushing that envelope a little bit. So yeah, that whole subscription and service has been tossed around a few times, and yeah, you guys gonna have to stay tuned and see what we come up with in the next few months.
Definitely. So that kind of leads into, where do you see the break even point for simulation and post processing? Like, should everyone use it? Like, is
Well,
there a certain machine tool value that you think is when you start looking at it? Like, what? I
yeah,
guess, how do you sell it to people?
yes,
You
no,
know.
and again, it has to make sense. It's everybody can definitely benefit from not having to crash their machine and not having to deal with the headaches and the costs associated with that. For sure, that's a no brainer. But it also again has to make sense from a commercial or from a financial standpoint for a shop. And ultimately, I guess it really depends on the type of parts and ultimately on the equipment that's going to be running this. Um, once in a while we do get requests from hobbyists or people starting shops, and I have one in particular that kind of sticks in my mind, where I had a guy contact me for supporting a 5-axis desktop type of CNC mill that you would typically see into a high school, and the guy is like, well, it's a few $1,000s, and I'd love to have the software because I obviously don't want to crash this machine. And I'm just like, well, I would love to help you out, but by the time we're done integrating this machine and developing a post for that, I'm not sure it's going to be making sense for you financially, because at that
Right.
point the software to drive this machine is probably going to be 4 or 5 times or 10 times what you paid for the actual machine. So from that standpoint, it really kind of has to fit with what the shop is after. That being said, am I saying we're only staying into the super high end worlds? No, again, we kind of have to be realistic and see what the ecosystem of those shops are. And the reality is there's multiple brands of machines into shops, and they do want that flexibility, and the software has to be accommodating that flexibility as well. So yes, we do still focus on that 5-axis type of equipment. That's really where we came from. But as the technology becomes more and more popular, the software has to kind of evolve the same way and continue to address the needs of those customers. And that's why we're constantly working to add support for different machine partners. And as a matter of fact, we're going to be announcing probably 2 or 3 new partners early next year, and that's really goes with being able to add those. So that's typically how we get in with a lot of those shops is get them started because they're growing into that 5-axis world. And then they really get familiar with the product, understand what it does, where they're benefiting from it, and say, okay, now that we're really up to speed on what's going on in here, we understand the technology. Now let's unify all of that and bring the entire shop to that same level of that new piece of equipment we've just brought in. And then at that point, that's when we start addressing those multiple machine brands that we need to support, and ultimately that really benefits all the customers involved on the platform, because as we're adding more and more capabilities for specific customers, ultimately that benefits everybody. So yeah, that it has to make sense from a customer standpoint as well. But yes, that's really where those situations do happen, where Matsura includes the software on the machine. We get started with one Matsura, and then it's okay. Hey, by the way, we're now growing into maybe a Micron or Hermley, and by the way, we have another Haas machine in the corner. We really want to unify everything onto the same platform. Can we support that machine as well? Or customers are jumping right in with that 500 and then grow into other brands. So ultimately, again, that's a solution that's going to grow with them, but they kind of have to be ready to kind of get there, and those benefits are you can, not that you would be able to put your hands on it, but you can really feel the impact it has on the shop. And yeah, ultimately that's where a lot of customers appreciate that they're able to focus on what they're really good at and not have to worry about the software stuff.
Definitely. So what do you see are the biggest mistakes that our people are making with CAMplete? Like what would you say? I guess where are the pitfalls? What are people calling you about to complain about, or to that they don't understand? And what would you want our audience or people jumping into CAMplete for the first time to avoid? I guess they're the pitfalls that you usually see.
Yes. Well, you know that's a question, I guess. You I've been involved on the customer side of things from different software applications for a little while, so I'm totally biased to the question there. I would say the first thing first, and I'm sure a lot of app guys, or whether it's on the software or machine tool guys, will start laughing, and it's just read the manual, man. Like, they send you instructions, read the manual. Just read the answers and follow the steps. But no, in all seriousness, it's it really um, more project specific questions that do come up. It's really more so, hey, you know what? I know I can control. Let's say which side of the train I'm tilting. I've built this project from 2 or 3 different CAM systems. I don't want to have to go back to each platform to control that. How do I do this? I'm detecting some over travels. What can I do? How am I going to fixture that? So it's really more so growing into the technology and all the different intricacies of really that 5-axis world than than the specifics of my tooling didn't come through, or a lot of those things with the simulation world, at least, is you cannot get what you put into it. So if the data set at the entry is not correct, we're not the magic box that's just going to magically fix everything. We can certainly fix a lot of things, and control and massage a lot of things, but ultimately the data has to be proper. If there is no tool defined or no tool number defined, that's not something that we can just process. So there's different tools in place so that we can start addressing those issues, but the data has to make sense when you start. It's gonna transferring all that information. If the data is not, if you don't have the proper 3D model in the proper orientation, yes, we can move it around, but calling the guys on support saying it didn't come in the proper orientation when it wasn't exported in the proper orientation is one of those things. And it's like, well, man, we can really try everything. We have the tools in place to let you move it around, but if it was there in the first place, then we wouldn't have those
Right. Yeah.
issues.
It's
So
it's the
yeah,
old adage
breaking
of
manual.
garbage in, garbage out kind of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly that. That's exactly what I didn't want to say, but yes.
So that kind of brings up one of our listener questions. DM Ron 101 says, "How does CAMplete go about verifying and ensuring the accuracy of the machine tool models?" And you kind of already touched on this, that
Yep.
they can be even serial number specific. But how do you guys go about? I mean, you have
Yep.
really good partnerships, but what's that process?
Yep. So typically the process, again, we're not working in a perfect world. There's different levels of quality of data coming from different machine builders, and that's something that they're struggling themselves with, and have their own needs. But yes, how we make sure the data is accurate is, again, by having that constant conversation with those machine partners, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of an earlier question that came up, and expanding the capabilities of the software to different machine tools is obviously great and beneficial for customers. But with that being said, there's we have no interest in simply supporting the entire CNC machine tools. It has to be something that does make sense for the partners we work with as well, and there's just a certain level of quality that we want to be able to maintain and bring value to those companies, and being able to have that very close relationship, and being in the loop when new models come out, from those builders, and being able to be involved very early in the process, and work with their timeline and be ready, and being able to handle revisions is something that is just part of that natural relationship that we have with those partners, because what we're doing is so closely involved with those machine partners that is really ultimately just an extension of what they're doing, and we're really part of that development process. Um, so even for specific customer applications, there are some builders that do take that very, very seriously, and go to the extent of providing serialized 3D models. So we do have the generic catalog versions that we can show on demos, and things like that, but for particular customer orders, then at that point it comes directly from the engineering department, and those different machine tool OEMs, and that's the data that the customer ultimately does receive, and does use. So that's one of the ways we can ensure that it drives the actual proper information. And when we do receive those orders from those different machine partners, we do have that detail information. So we'll know exactly, obviously, where the machine is licensed, and who the customer is, but ultimately what options the customer purchased from those different machine builders, what spindle they have, what controller version they have, rotary table, laser probes, and so on, and then that machine is really custom built specifically for this customer, and that's what they're running. So yeah, that's really how we go by making sure that it is matching that. And that integration really pushes further than just the machine model. where it really goes on the not just the machine, but really more so on the code side of things. Depending on the option, they may have an impact on the codes. Different version of that same controller may have different way of reaching those parameters. Older versions of, let's say, the Heinlein control, we would go to the PLC side and then extract the machine parameters, kinematic tables specifically for that machine tool that the customer has on the floor. And then that's what we would use for the post processing and the verification. So it becomes very, very intimate to that specific machine tool, and that's what we're all about. It's not about just supporting everything that's in the CNC world. It's really just doing those machine partners equipment extremely well.
Okay. So how deep can the verification go? Like, can you guys simulate macros as well and things like that within the software?
So as far as the software takes for an input, it's really we're not taking existing G code as an input. We're taking CL data, so cutter location data from the CAM system. And then from there we will run it. So a lot of those questions come up with macros. We do have some macro capabilities in TruePath, but it's not something that we do have natively built in the same way you would see it with maybe a Vericut or an NC Symbol type of things. That being said, it's not because we can't read those macros directly that we don't have similar functions. So one of the things that I'm thinking about is probing. So very often customers like, okay, now I've modified my Renishaw macros. Can you make sure I didn't make any issues? And it's like, well, are you sure you really want to do that? Why are you doing this? Again, kind of taking that 30,000 foot view and really trying to understand what's going on there.
Right.
So, um, again, we do we do have those needs. The guys in the shop want to be probing. Some other customers would want to be probing. So those capabilities are ultimately built directly within the software with that same 30-foot view of, okay, if we're supporting probing, there's a number of steps in place that need to happen to ultimately get there. So what are those steps? Why do we want to probe? So typically customers would want to probe to locate the parts. That would definitely be the first thing. Where's my parts? Do I even have a part in there? Is the stock the right size? So right there, just for stock location, you have 3 or 4 different functions that you would want to check to really make sure you're doing things properly. And then from there, it's like, okay, now I want to be able to do some feature inspections. So what would that mean to be able to do feature inspections? That means that you would want to check what the G code actually cuts versus what the part should be at the end. So we have that information. The software can do that. So let's build that feature in there. Let's compare those two. So let's do the material removal. Let's do the stock comparison, compare what we actually cut to what the part should be. And now it can make sense and say, okay, now we can see we do have a difference. And let's go measure the probe. So now that's another application for that probing. So again, being able to do that, depending on the equipment a customer would run, did they standardize on Renishaw? Do they have a Renishaw probe here and then they have another Bloom probe over there that's running on the Heinlein control, that's not running on the Renishaw with the Fennec? So now we have to accommodate all those different scenarios. So again, it's just running a macro and give you a yes no answer is not what we're in for. We're really trying to look at it from a bigger perspective and really understand the intent of what the customer is actually trying to do. And now that also brings a lot of opportunities for development to really being able to run with that and push it a little bit more and say, okay, now if we do have those macros, we understand what's going on, and we do have the proper code. We see there's a difference between what the part has cut, or sorry, what the code has cut and what the part should be. Let's go use the probe on the machine to go measure that difference. And now why not push this a little bit further and do something intelligent and let the machine make a decision on the process. Build that intelligence within the code itself and say, hey, you know what? Maybe I should rerun this particular toolpath with a new offset, so that I can make sure this part comes out to size the first time. And so yes, that's really what we're excited about, exploring some of those ideas, and see if we can bring them to life, and ultimately make that easier. And really, one of the only ways to do that is to kind of build that within that same platform and environment, and bringing external sources in there. We kind of lose some of that. Well, not kind of. We totally lose some of that flexibility and level of control that is already built in TruePath by not being able to have that with existing G code.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So one thing I completely forgot to ask about it before when we were talking about price and value proposition and all of that. I You also have TruePath Lite. So where does that fall in as far as cost? And I know it's more geared towards 3 axis, so I imagine that it is a little less than the full TruePath.
Yes. Yeah, no, it totally is a lot less. So really, the idea that's a product that kind of came to life working with one of those machine tool partners very very quickly, and yes, it's really geared towards 3 axis, so nothing all that crazy. It's really more focused on the code side of things. There's a lot of features that we have in TruePath on code manipulations and monitoring, and things like that. They're not necessarily required when you're strictly working off a 3 axis environment. So at that point, it's really what the name says it is. It's really a stripped down, lighter version of TruePath without all the bells and whistles, if you want a level of control that you would need operating in a 5 axis environment. So cost wise, yes, that's reflected as well. So you'd probably be looking more in the $5,000 range to have a machine supported in Light.
Okay, that's great to know. So we had a few other questions from our listeners. D-Man151 Racing wanted to know, is it possible to import tool builds from other software like Mastercam or WinTool? I know Omega has partnered with TDM systems.
Yeah. So from that perspective, again, it kind of comes back to that earlier comment of kind of garbage in, garbage out. So being able to simulate what's going on in that machine environment with the data coming from the CAM system, and really making sense of the entire setup. That tooling has a tremendous impact into being able to make that decision whether it's valid or not. So that tooling is definitely something that we would want to the user, for one, to know. If you have to create a toolpath, you have to know what tools you're using. So that's the first step. But really, how do we transfer that over? So yes, we do have a way to pass this information over, and it does happen very seamlessly. It's something I know everybody uses that buzzword, but it's really um, a 3-click type of scenario in Mastercam. It's really launch the plugin, export the data, everything is in TruePath, and say, yep, process it, and that passes everything along, including the tooling. So that's really one of those areas of work that we're constantly working as well with the machine. Sorry, not just the machine partner guys, but also the software guys. Not only to understand what's going on the machine side, but also what information, what new toolpath are those CAM companies coming up with? Is there new types of tools that we need to support? Like, for example, in the last couple of years, there has been a really, really strong push on all those barrel cutters and form tools and things like that. So ultimately, we have to be able to accommodate that, because simply that's what customers are using. So yes, there's definitely ways to import the data from multiple sources. So the tooling from Mastercam will come through, and basically just different levels of integrations that we'll have with those different CAM systems will let us pass the data for that tooling in different formats. So Mastercam does work extremely well. The Autodesk products do work extremely well, and we're constantly adding better and better integration for all those different CAM systems to ultimately bring them all at that same level of for one, working the same way, looking the same way, and just passing that same information the same way, and give that much more flexibility to users.
Okay, great. That sounds like it makes the whole process a lot less uh, cumbersome. I guess a lot more
Yeah,
seamless.
and again, it's really about being able to pass that information along very quickly, and doing that in a way that's intelligent and making sense. So you already need the toolpath information and the tool information and the fixturing information when you're programming your part. So the data already exists. Why would you have to recreate it a second time? Simply because the interface doesn't exist, it is not necessarily the easiest thing for a customer. So the easier we can make the customer's life, the better it is for them as well. And simply being able to pass that along is making their life easier, and ultimately our life easier as well.
So you kind of touched on this in the very beginning when you were talking about
Yep.
people um, looking online for post processors or whatever. But one of our listeners, CNC App James, he's an applications engineer, asked, "Are there any plans for an online forum for users to get online assistance and commiserate or help each other or anything like that?"
Yes. So yes, I have seen the questions from James. James has been actually a super, super um, awesome guy to work with. James has been providing a lot of feedback to what we're doing, and I think he's been one of our very, very first customers or app guys that we've been working with for a long time. I think um, James started working with us probably back in early mid 2000, somewhere like that. So it's been a little while since we've been working with James. All kinds of cool projects out in California. But yes, to back to his questions about the forum. Yes, that is something that we're working on, and obviously that came up today as to, okay, what is the software capable of doing, and is there a lot of features that people are not utilizing, and things like that, and we're listening to our customers, and obviously we have to address the technical stuff. That's what people come to us, but ultimately we want to make sure people are getting the right information, that they're getting the proper stuff addressed, that they're able to exchange their ideas, interact with us, and we don't want to fall into one of those situations where we only see things our way, and the way we run the shop. It has to be making sense for customers, and being able to give them that space to explore those ideas, share them with us, and ultimately have a lot of value brought to what we're doing is definitely of interest. So yes, we're very much looking into that. That we have a ton of new stuff coming up in the pipe. So new machine partners, new marketing videos that we're working on, and now new podcasts. So that's awesome. Thanks again, guys.
We really appreciate you coming on. That's for sure.
Yeah. One more question, Jeff. We're kind of doing a full circle here, but how did you personally get into manufacturing?
Oh, more on the personal level. That's a cool question.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So well, my story is a little interesting. So I'm originally, well, I'm still am a French citizen. So I've done all my schooling overseas in France. I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, so I kind of went right in for it. Ultimately, mechanical engineering was not necessarily what I was in for. I really wanted to be a pilot in the Air Force, but ultimately my eyes weren't quite up to snuff. So engineering was kind of my backup. So no, in all honesty, I really went into it. Um, I was obviously very interested. Went for my degree, and then kind of started working. In France, doing some aluminium welding work, doing some handrails and ladders and really industrial stuff, and got bored very, very quickly. And then from there, one of the cool things with aluminium welding is it's not all that easy to do. So those shops are not common. So a lot of people doing racing and needing custom pipes for engines would be coming across the shop fairly regularly, and that very much piqued my interest. And then from there, kind of did a few years into the motorsport worlds across Europe, and then ended up in Canada in the early or mid 2005, and then from there always kind of been into that machining world. So I got a job at one of the universities here doing research on high speed milling applications and different coatings for tools for different materials, for typically like high nickel based alloys and titanium and nasty materials like that. But one of those perks of working into that educational setting, if you want, is really that access that you can have to different software, and that's something that always really piqued my interest to really understand what was going on there, and really how we can really utilize that and push kind of the boundaries there. And then the research was cool, but ultimately I had to get my hands on the technology and kind of make chips myself and really feel it for what it was, and just kind of fell in love and really from that research type of setting really jumped into the application world, and then ultimately help those customers, okay, this is what we want to do on the toolpath side of things, and really worked with customers right at the shop level, really making parts and really proving the stuff out, and from there really had that attraction towards that 5 axis, and it was up with the schooling and was making sense. It was a lot of cool technology and really wanted to grow into that. And then the first thing that comes up with all those software on the cam world, at least, is the posting. How do I get code? How do we make sure it makes sense? And now that code is not working. How do I troubleshoot this? And that's really been a constant question for a number of years now. And then when I connected with Mike at CAMplete, I was like, okay, finally somebody has a proper answer to this question I've been trying to answer for a long time, and then it really made perfect sense. Not just from a software perspective for what I've been accustomed to doing for a number of years, but also just from an overall picture of, say, okay, now I really have the best of both worlds. I can really combine what's going on the software side, still keep my hands active, and really be in the shop and see what the guys are doing, why they're doing it a certain way, and combine all that. But overall, yeah, it's been really a love story with manufacturing from a very very early stage. Just needed to kind of find my way through all that.
Very
So,
cool.
yeah.
Well, again, we really appreciate you coming on. I know I had never even heard of CAMplete until a couple of years ago, and then it seems like it's just popping up everywhere. So you're clearly doing a bang up job, getting it out there.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, it's awesome, and that's something that we're learning, over the years as well, and it kind of goes back to kind of obviously keeping up with the times and really going on, looking at what's going on, and kind of pushing that envelope a little bit more. So yes, we over the years we've kind of started being that really niche boutique area, really focused onto that crazy 5 axis type of stuff, and the world is changing. Customers are getting access to that technology. It's a lot more affordable. It's a lot more realistic now to have those 5 axis machines. But that doesn't mean that the technology is less complicated or less complex. That level of complexity is still there. It's just shifted. It's now there has been a tremendous investment that's been made on the controller side, on the tool pathing side. If you look at all those fixturing guys, they're doing a bang up job on coming up with solutions that even a few years ago you're like, nobody can do this. Same thing on the tooling side, and I see what we're doing on the tooling side, and it's super cool. So really being able to tie all that stuff together is just a lot of fun, and yeah, we're really keeping up with that, and I'm glad what we're doing on the marketing side is working. So yeah, definitely glad to hear that.
Great. Well, again, thanks for coming on. I think Peyton, unless you got something, that's probably a great place to wrap up for tonight.
Yeah, once again, thank you, Jeff, for coming on. And guys, follow him on Instagram. We'll make sure to tag him on the Instagram post and put all that details on the actual description of the podcast. But other than that, we will see you guys next week for episode 23 with Dylan and I.
Yep. Have a great night, guys.
All right. Thank you, guys.